Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome back. So what I was talking about before is you have masked your beaker, your 50 milliliter beaker. Or your 100 milliliter beaker, and you know the mass of the empty beaker. So when you are getting the volumes, you are going to be getting the volumes of each of 25 mils of your soda using each of the three apparatuses, each of these three glassware: your graduated cylinder, your volumetric pipette, and your burette. And so what you're going to need to do is you're going to get two measurements for each time you do this. So let's start with the pipette. So you now have the empty beaker. So what you're going to do is you're going to, we're going to start with the pipette. You're going to take your pipette, it's primed, it's ready to go. You're going to use your pipette to get 25 milliliters of your soda that you're grabbing from the 150 milliliter beaker that it's in. Okay? You're going to then transfer that to your empty beaker. So then you're going to take your beaker with the contents and go back to the balance that you originally used to get the mass of your empty beaker. And then you're going to get the mass of the beaker with its contents. So now you have two measurements for your pipette. So you have one for the empty beaker and one for the beaker with the 25 milliliters of the soda. Okay, but you're going to do this 3 times total, right? So once you've done it once with the pipette, you're going to do it 2 more times. But each time you do this, you're going to have to empty out the contents of your beaker, right? So the 50 milliliter or the 100 milliliter beaker that you transfer the 25 milliliters of soda to, you're going to dump that out, and then you're going to rinse out the beaker and dry it. So, and then after drying it, before you do another 25 milliliters, you've got to get the mass of the empty beaker again. You can't assume that the original mass that you got for the first trial using the pipette is the same as the second trial, because these are analytical balances. They measure to the 4th decimal place, so they're very, very sensitive for any changes. So if there's just a little bit of residue left over, or if you left lint in the beaker because you're using paper towels, or whatever the case may be, you need to make sure that you know the mass of that beaker. You just can't assume that, oh, it's got to be the same. Well, no, that's a bad assumption. Okay, so one of the things in these labs, the biggest thing about these labs that you are going to learn, or you should learn, is good, proper lab technique in order to get, good data, right? That's the goal, is to get good data. Right. I understand there's a grade tied to labs, and that's an important thing, but the grade is really tied to how well you're doing lab procedure. And if you've got really good skills and you're doing good procedure, then you're gonna get the results that are gonna get you the grade. So and really in the end, it's about lab procedure, because those skills are the things you're gonna take with you later in life if you go on to do chemistry or science or something like that. So so you gotta remass your empty beaker before you do it again. Okay, so you remass the empty beaker. You're gonna use your pipette a second time, get the 25 milliliters, put it into the empty beaker, and then go back to your balancing and weigh out, mass the beaker with its contents. And then you're going to empty the beaker again, and then you're going to rinse it out with water, and then dry it out, and then you're going to do it a 3rd time with the pipette. Okay, and then you're going to, again, before you do it a 3rd time, you have to get the mass of the empty beaker a 3rd time, and then transfer 25 milliliters using your pipette to the empty beaker, and then get the mass again. So for the pipette alone, you should have 3 trials. Each trial is going to have 2 measurements, and the empty beaker measurement and the beaker with the 25 milliliters of your soda in it. Okay, and then you're done with the pipette. And then you're going to repeat with the burette. So you're going to get 3 measurements using your burette. Each time you use the burette, before you transfer 25 milliliters using the burette, you're going to rinse out and dry your beaker and then get the mass of the empty beaker. So when you do your burette, you're going to have 3 sets of data. Each set of data is going to have 2 numbers, 2 masses: empty beaker mass and beaker plus soda mass. Okay, and then when you're done with your burette, then you do it with your graduated cylinder. Okay, so once you've got your 3 measurements for each of your cylinders, your apparatuses, you're going to then find the average mass of the soda using all of those. So you collected 3 masses. Well, you gotta figure out what the mass of your soda is, right? And I'll leave that to you to figure out. Once you find the masses of your sodas, you got 3 masses. You're gonna find the average mass, and then use the average mass to find the density, right? So you know the volume, right? So the volume you transferred, and then you're going to follow the same procedure for your burette and your graduated cylinder. So a thing about significant figures, you got to make sure that you write down the proper significant figures. So the balance is going to be have the proper number of significant figures, which is going to be 4. So whatever significant figures or whatever numbers that the balance gives you, write those down. Now the balance can go up to 4 significant figures. 4 decimal places if you are under a certain amount. I think if you got 59.9999, that's when you get 4 decimal places. But as soon as you hit 60 grams, it goes down to 3 decimal places. So you might notice that as you're doing the experiment that the measurement of the balance will go from 4 decimal places to 3 decimal places, and that's because you've gone over. So from 0 to 59.9999 grams, it'll give you 4 decimal places, and then if you go above that, then it'll drop down to 3 decimal places. So be aware of that. Also with the graduated cylinder, you need to make sure that you know the number of significant figures you're allowed here, how many sig figs you're allowed. Your 25 milliliter pipette, this is precise to 2 decimal places. So make sure that every single measurement that you have has 2 decimal places in it. So if this is supposed to be 25, you shouldn't be writing 25. You should be writing 25.00, right? So make sure you write down the proper significant figures. Also, your burette. So your burette will measure to certain decimal places. So you need to make sure you understand how to measure that to the proper number of decimal places, and then record that in your table. Okay, so that's it for the procedure. There's a few things I want to go over really quick. Okay, so a couple of things I want to clarify with regard to sig figs. So on your graduated cylinder, you'll notice that there are 10 lines. So if you read, let's read this one. So if you fill it all the way up, let's say there's 90, notice that you'll see that there are 10 spaces from 90 to 100. So that means that each of the lines represents 1 milliliter. And so in between, if your meniscus is in between, that means you're allowed a 1 decimal over. So you can measure this. All of your measurements should be should have 1 decimal place in the measure. Okay, so this measures to 1 decimal place. For your burette, if you notice, I don't know if you could see that. You'll notice that each number represents a milliliter. So that means that each line, again, you have 10 spaces between the numbers. So that means each space represents, or each line represents 0.1 milliliter. That means that if your meniscus is between the lines, that means you're allowed to estimate to 1 decimal place over. So your burette is going to measure to the 2 decimal places. So all your measurements should be to 2 decimal places for the burette. Okay, so that's a little bit about the sig figs that you should have when you're measuring using those devices. Also remember that when you have calculated your average density for your Coke or Diet Coke, you need to tell that to me, and then I can enter it into the computer. And then what I'm going to do, once I have everyone's data, I'm going to give you class data later that you're going to then analyze. And I'll talk about calculations and analyzing in another video. Or there'll be another video about it, so be on the lookout for that. Also, make sure, one of the reasons you want to make sure that you're following the procedure and doing everything as quick or as well as you can is because if your density is way off compared to where it should be, then I will be asking you to do it again. So the procedure is pretty quick, so if I ask you to do it again, it's not going to take you that long. But you don't really want to repeat anything. So make sure that you're doing the correct procedure, because I will make you repeat it if your densities are off, because it's important to get good class data that I'm going to share with you. What else is there? So let me talk about the burette a little bit more. So with the burette, when you set it up, you're going to set it up like this. So this is a burette clamp, and so what you're going to do is you're going to put the burette on the clamp here, like so. And one of the things you want to be aware of is after you've primed this, you want to fill it up with your substance, and you want to fill it up past the line. And the reason why you want to fill it up past the line is because you need to drain it through your stopcock. So if I raise this up here, so you'll drain it through the stopcock to get out the air bubbles. Like I showed before, you turn. So you're going to turn it 3 times. And it's okay if it goes below zero. You don't have to measure your initial volume at 0. As a matter of fact, I would encourage you not to, because I want you to get in the habit of just measuring your initial volume wherever it is, because that's the thing with burettes is you can measure, as long as you are being precise with your measurement, then you can measure it anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's 0. It could be below 0. Whatever the initial volume is, just measure it where it is. And then you're going to dispense 25 milliliters. So you calculate, okay, so if I'm starting here, you add 25 milliliters to that amount, and then that's where you're supposed to drain it to. Okay? So get in the habit of just measuring it where it is. Don't spend a whole lot of time trying to get it perfectly on 0, because it's just a waste of time. So just measure it where it's at. Okay? So the other thing is you want to make sure that you're reading it directly on.